Parliament, the Honorable Saiku Andrews, Leader of the PNCR and Chairman of the APNU, Mr. Aubrey Norton, Member of Parliament Shara Duncan, Member of Parliament Dr. Dexter Todd, and Councillor Shanika Haynes, RDC 4. Today's press statement will be read in 4 parts, and I now invite MP Duncan to read the first.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. This week, Guyanese again saw another episode of the forceful removal of Guyanese from lands they have occupied for years. The residents in Friendship, they have occupied those lands and they have been forced off of them in compliance with a court order. This is not new. In the case of Mucka, the government bulldozed the people, claiming that they were in the path of the road. All and sundry have seen this was not the case. And what is worse, this regime gave those lands to their favorites, land right opposite, which is, as they claim, in the path of the road. What is more troubling is that we see the same formula at work in Friendship by the government and now by private landowners. They've come with a court order, police and bulldozers and excavators. People who occupy the lands, in some cases for many, many years, for generations. They have to endure an unforgettable, horrible experience of displacement and with little hope of normalcy or dignity as they move forward. The recent history of such actions includes Mucka Arcadia, Sarah, Joanna, Hillfoot, and now Friendship, but not limited to these communities. This forces us to ask the question, where next? While it is the right of any private landowner to free enjoyment of their property, and while the government may have development plans for a specific piece of real estate, the current format of destruction and harm is not what our society should be aspiring to. A clear and humane process is available to those affected on both sides of the issue. And what is more troubling is the unwillingness of the government to learn from these distasteful experiences forced upon our citizens and the lack of a desire of the government to put a better housing policy in place. This is evident in Region 4. There are some 75,000 applications for land. And most recently, the government has said they will attack this backlog in all other regions, save and except Region 4. Region 4 is not a priority. Region 4 is a unique demand situation. At the Ministry of Housing, land are issued, but the owners of the land cannot start construction because it's often a paper transaction where the land allocated is there, but road access and other utility services, water and light are oftentimes, most times, it's not available. At the lands and surveys, the process is slow and it has major bottlenecks as well, because the office of the president has to step in every single instance and sign the leases. What then is a function of the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission? Everyday Guyanese, families outgrow their current spaces. They need places of their own. Another issue with the advent of oil and the resulting housing demand, housing prices and rents have increased. Many locals are displaced and desperate. We also have a fundamental issue of low wages and salaries in Guyana. Guyana is blessed with 83,000 square miles that we call home. There is space to house every citizen. And that is what this great party has been associated with from its inception, a housed nation. Many are forced currently to survive on road reserves and dams, unoccupied private lands, and unused government lands. This is because of policy and execution. This is because of the policy and execution failure at the governmental level, at the PPPC governmental level. We implore this government of the fastest growing economy per capita to utilize a different approach as it relates to reclaiming lands under its control. If squatters are allowed to be in a place for many years, sometimes for generations, as we've alluded to, their removal must be in consultation with them, and alternative lands should be available to them. We acknowledge that in this process, it will take some time. And as a society, we cannot treat our people with disregard. APNU wishes to remind our collective consciousness that housing in Guyana is not a new phenomenon. The PNC has delivered, as we've articulated, many housing schemes, such as Ruimveldt housing areas, Tugville, and many, many others, South Ruimveldt, North Ruimveldt. And as I said, we have been historically not only interested in providing housing for Guyanese, but also in the establishment of communities. And that is the fundamental difference with this government and the governance that we offer. The layout, quality, and volume of housing needs to be addressed. The current government has failed to deliver such a solution for Guyana. They have been restricting Guyanese to house lots rather than giving them houses, rather than giving them homes. They can take from Guyanese, or rather, they can take from the APNU manifesto. If they so wish, they've already gone with the theme, our rent-to-own scheme. They can take it and use it. We've also put an offer, a free house lot for every Guyanese earning below $400,000 a month. That's most Guyanese. In this oil economy, there is enough resources to build houses for the people of Guyana and build communities. As I said, we're interested in a house nation. And finally, for my part, the government needs to do better research as well, to plan, to communicate, to execute in the relocation of people. Note, we said relocation and not removal. The key element here is the provision of adequate housing, either temporarily or permanent, for these affected persons. In our last press conference, it was said that there's a space for the south of the East Coast that can be developed and used to alleviate, among other things, this huge housing demand. There is no room for a bulldozer in a modern Guyana when Guyanese are happy to follow a very structured approach for them to receive housing. And on this issue of their destructive displacement, we want also to highlight the issue of who is most affected time and again. We note that many squatters are regularized across many communities in Guyana, but there is a disproportionate use of force and destruction when it comes to dealing with African Guyanese. And we saw this firsthand in Maka. And this should not be in a diverse country as is Guyana. I thank you.
Thank you, MP Duncan. I now call upon Councillor Haynes to read the second part of the press statement.
Food and other vendors displaced and denied development. Vending has been and will continue to be a problem in most countries, especially those with high unemployment and high levels of unskilled people, as is the case in Guyana. Generally, the removal of roadside vendors is to ensure order, improve safety, and the overall appearance of public space. And our APNU is of the view that the government's program is being done selectively and without proper planning. Many vendors across Guyana depend on vending in public spaces as their only means of survival. This fact must be taken into consideration when dealing with the issue of vending. There should be structured alternatives in place, such as the designated vending zones. In many other countries and in the history of Guyana's vending offers a place to go to have a bite or a shop for a small item isn't anything new. The fact is that many Guyanese will not vend if they have a choice. The reality is that many Guyanese cannot find jobs that fit their capacity. Others are victimized and forced out of public service. Many single mothers are rebuilding their lives and fighting for survival as vendors. The current local government minister has trotted out her humane show when dealing with vending in certain communities and is never present when her ministry deals with other communities. Clearly, all vendors are not the same. It is like giving a spelling test where you ask children to spell a big animal like a cow as opposed to a small animal like a mosquito. The government needs to put things in place to make sure the education system delivers benefits for citizens, so less people potentially choose to fend for survival as vendors. The government needs to professionalize the public service so the political and personal views of citizens is no hindrance to them enjoying employment as public servants. The government needs to improve significantly the opportunities for single women to establish themselves as business owners and benefit from options like women focused government contracts. Such an approach, if done in a fair and professional manner, would improve the situation. APNU understands that relocation sometimes is necessary, but it must be done in a fair, professional manner based on proper planning and humane consideration. At the very least, a suitable and safe space should be provided for vendors to continue earning an honest living. This is an initial and reachable step forward to the goal of reducing vending in public spaces. Unfortunately, because of the lack of vision, there are no such programs in the $1.558 trillion budget. APNU supports solutions that uplift people and does not displace them without alternatives.
Thank you, MP Haynes. I now call upon MP Andrews to read the third part of today's press statement.
Good morning. Road construction confusion, the dust and delays. Residents on the Lower East Coast and East Bank villages have complained about the delays and dust they are experiencing because of the road expansion projects. APNU is all for development. While development of roads is a fundamental responsibility of government, the process and experience citizens are experiencing are unbearable. Contractors are allowed to operate without concern for citizens and without health and safety regulations. No wonder we lost two precious young lives in Melanie due to such negligence. We call on the government to ensure that all contracts include health and safety protocols. Our local councillors and members of parliament have been engaged by citizens with several complaints, and this forces us to underscore the notable absence of proper planning in infrastructure development. Travel is significantly delayed on a daily basis on the East Coast and East Bank corridors. The dust is a nuisance to travelers and people living in the vicinity of these public works and poses potential health risks. Some segments of the road construction are started and left for a significant long period, while others are ongoing. APNU is asking the Minister of Public Infrastructure to intervene by setting up standard operation procedures and adequate project management protocols for infrastructure projects. We do not need another early morning views out by the President as an operating procedure. In some instances, the presidents were given a list of delinquent contractors when those contractors were not even given commencement letters. Clearly, this is a manifestation of incompetence. APNU notes that water dispensers are sometimes used to keep the dust down. On many occasions, they are not utilized. We believe we believe their use must be a standard part of contract for road construction. Citizens who reside or commute through construction zones welcome this initiative. APNU is advising that the length of road segment under construction be a factor within the SOP for road construction. Currently, we have lengthy segments of the road undergoing rehabilitation, and it creates lengthy delays in the flow of traffic. With the lengthy segments, citizens see their bridges destroyed and replaced by planks for extended periods of time. In some instances, erosion or flooding affects citizens' private property. This is the case in Bachelor's Adventure, where there is the construction of the Ogle to Mahaika Road. Government is not holding contractors accountable and is not working in the interest of the people. We urge a change to this approach. As the fastest growing economy per capita, we cannot settle for rush development. Even speed bumps or speed humps are done in an ad hoc manner. Where is the specification for speed bumps that contractors must follow? If the government cannot oversee such a simple element of road construction, we have an enduring problem. APNU is advocating that Guyana needs a structured, reliable, and efficient infrastructure policy, and it must be judiciously implemented. Anyone can build a road and return to fix the flaws, but efficient infrastructure development must mean the delivery of quality work and not work that must be redone shortly after completion. There should be road lifetime warranty written into the contracts. The PNC built the Linden-Soesdijk Highway that had 20 years warranty, which it outlived. The nation needs to return to properly built infrastructure with warranty on the work done. On the East Coast roads, which are under construction, with some segments awaiting completion for years. In some locations, the construction is unattended and unfinished for so long that grass has overgrown the road under construction. Be reminded that the Linden-Soesdijk Highway began in 1966 and was completed by 1968. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Andrews. I now call upon MP Dr. Todd to read the final part of today's press statement.
Thank you. Discipline is in disarray under the Ministry of Education. The APNU PNC is concerned about the recent spike of varying issues and incidents that are plaguing our schools and that have been making their way on social media. It must be noted first and foremost that bullying should stop being treated reactively. It should be addressed proactively. It is necessary to look at each incident separately while identifying similar traits. At present, there is a bias in how school issues are dealt with. Some schools have matters dealt with expeditiously, while other schools have matters prolonged and even disregarded after a visit from the department. Bullying is not an issue that should be addressed by the Ministry of Education alone, but should be inclusive of other ministries, such as the Home Affairs and Human Services. These spikes of violent fighting and bullying in and out of schools, weapons of all sorts that have been found in the possession of pupils and students, and accusations that have been leveled against teachers for having sexual relations with their students are worrying trends. We are very concerned about this situation that is reflecting a reflection of several factors. Topping the list is the incompetence and absent vision of the government. Second is the trend that some members of government have been accused of similar acts, and now those acts are becoming culture in our society, sadly finding its way into our schools. Third, the state of affairs when one considers how Guyanese citizens have to live on meager salaries, high cost of living, and the increase in poverty. These factors have complicated the situation, which has resulted in a fight for survival, giving formation to gangs, the attraction of monies for sexual favors, demanding of sexual favors for grades, and display of arrogance because of one's political affiliation. While all of this is happening, the nation is left in awe as there's no immediate end or solution. We need a strengthened incident reporting system that ensures that students have safety in complaining and seeking justice. We must investigate the problems with urgency and show the students that when they complain, they are heard and the matter is dealt with before it escalates. When matters are reported, ensure that counseling is available for both the accused and victim as required. Many times the students do not trust the system or their information is not protected, and therefore they take matters into their own hands. They resort to restorative justice rather than punitive justice. The security system should be improved in schools. In many schools, students enter and leave premises as they feel. Students should only leave the premises by permission or at dismissal. Many times during unorthodox hours, students are seen out of school unsupervised. Stop labeling our students. Start fixing the system. The recent trend of labeling students in schools across Guyana as a pandemic gang is not only troubling, it is deeply irresponsible. Such language does nothing to address the challenges within the education system. Instead, it stigmas and the entire generation of young people who are still recovering from the disruptive effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our students did not create the situations they now face. They endured prolonged school closures, inconsistent learning environments, and a sudden shift back into structured classrooms without adequate social support. To now brand them as a problem is to ignore the very real gaps in policy, planning, and intervention. Rather than rushing to label and condemn, there must be a serious examination of the policies implemented during and after the pandemic. Were the reintegration strategies sufficient? Were teachers and schools given the resources needed to manage behavioral and academic challenges? Were students provided with the emotional and social support necessary to readjust? The answers to these questions are critical. What we are witnessing today is not a failure of student. It is a reflection of the systemic shortcomings. Language matters. When we label our children, We shape public perception, and more dangerously, we shape how these young people see themselves. A nation cannot afford to malign or align its future and reduce them into harmful stereotypes. The focus must be to shift from the blame to responsibility. It is time to invest in guidance counseling, teacher training, community engagement, and policies that place students at the center of recovery efforts. Our students are not a pandemic gang. They are young citizens in need of understanding, structure, and opportunity. Let us treat them as the valuable future. We call on government to act and act now. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Todd. I now open the floor for questions on today's press statement.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Harris.
Yes, sorry. Well, we heard quite a mouthful. And there are a couple of questions I really want to ask. Why am I going to take it up? I'll start with the friendship issue, that land issue. Mr. Duncan addressed that. Sir, can you say that you have successfully determined the origin of the issue? I heard about a Miss Elaine Adams. Did she always own the property? When was it sold? And if this was so, when did Mr. Rutherford acquire the property?
Thank you very much, Adam. I know Dr. Dexter Todd, who we have here with us today, he engaged the citizens there, or the residents there, specifically on the legal aspects. I want him to speak to that.
Thank you. The investigation so far, of course, revealed that the person by the name of Elaine is not the first owner of the property. Tracing back, we found that there was a Ram North. I'm trying to find who owned before that. The transaction in relation to Rutherford, or the company in which he is a part of, I think that was completed in sometime in 2018. So Elaine acquired by prescription, and the company in which Rutherford is a part of acquired by sale from Elaine.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Before you go, I believe that this issue has to be looked at in depth. You're only hearing now about these, but as leader of the opposition, we were looking at what was happening in friendship. And we think the problem is deeper. In fact, at one time after investigation, we found that the original transport, the original documents cannot be found. And I believe unless we can find those original documents, because those are only some of the people you're hearing now, there are others. There's a particular man, I don't remember his name now, who for years have been trying to establish, I think, his father ownership and the origin of the land. I recall at one time we asked Roysdale Ford to help with it and so. So this what you're seeing here, in my opinion, is a manifestation of a wider problem where transports and the history of the land, they are disappearing, and it is creating conditions propitious to people claiming others' land. And that is an issue we have to look at.
That brings us to the question, sir. Computers first appeared in Guyana in the 1980s. In every other part of the world, such documents would be computerized. They would be a large scale. What has prevented Guyana from going in this direction to the extent that we still depend on paper and rotting paper that can easily be destroyed?
Well, I think a number of factors would have contributed. I don't think you're correct to say it emerged in the 80s. When I worked as an office assistant in the bauxite company, I was in the computer department. Of course, in those days was the big IBM computer, but that's another issue. But I believe we have as a country, and I think both political parties that govern Guyana at different stage, we can say we have been tardy in terms of computerizing the system. And we probably need to hurtle to ensure that the system is computerized and that that information can be traced. But let me make this point though. If you when you computerize now, if you don't have the original, you might be computerizing and generating more problems. And as we have seen in some banks, computerization don't necessarily mean efficiency. It should, but we have seen in the case of Guyana, where some areas where computerization became more a burden than a relief to the society. So I support computerization, but it has to be done in a professional and proper way. And mind you, computerization of a society will demand as well that you improve the literacy of the society, because an illiterate society will have grave difficulties in a computerized society. I have traveled with people who try to fill up a document on a line and it was disastrous. So the society has to address these issues, and it's address them in a comprehensive way, including ensuring that we have a literate and numerate society that can operate in a digital world. Every time I hear the president or somebody talking about computerization and the digitalization of Guyana, I often wonder, why are they running down this road without rectifying first the problem of creating a literate, numerate population that can live in a digitalized world?
Adam, in addition to that, again, I wanna piggyback on some of what the leader said, that the human element will always be brought into question. There was a case just decided by the CCJ, and one of the things in this case is that when they were looking back at the history of the land issue, a huge page from inside the code system was torn out of the relevant book. We had a case recently, a couple of years back, when this historic amount of cocaine was shipped to Belgium, and they were looking back at some of the files from the GRA scan and so on. Thousands of photographs were deleted from the computerized system. Again, the human element. But what I want to get at centrally, as a party, the PNCR has been historically interested in housing people and to build communities for people. And you go back to the legislation that deals with the Housing Act. You look at the Constitution. There is not only a responsibility of government, but there's also a duty of a government to provide dignified housing and safe communities. The government, the PUP government, has been eerily silent on this issue for days now. This matter has been in the public fore, and the government has said absolutely nothing. Now, if you look at this putting people first budget, they've taken the team from the APNU PNC's manifesto for 2025. If you look at this budget, they're saying for 2026 alone, they want to do 15,000 allocations. If not for these people, a handful of people at Friendship, for who? The government has said nothing, right? They talk about the amount of squatting areas they're regularizing, but yet the people at Friendship has never had any contact with Central Housing and Planning, with the Ministry of Housing, in relation to their regularizing, and this is not necessarily regularizing the lands they're on, but whether they will be relocated elsewhere. They've never had any contact with Central Housing and Planning. The government wants to build this year 8,000 homes, if not for the people who live in these abject circumstances at Friendship. Who are these homes being built for? The government's silence on this particular matter, as on many other matters, it's deafening. But the point I want to underline here mostly is that we have had a historic attachment with building not only people, but building homes for people, building houses for people, and building communities. And you go any part of this country and you'll see that imprint on the landscape.
Adam, the housing issue is very, very complex in some regard. The major problem I think we have is that the government takes slogans, but they don't look at the content of the slogan. For you to put people first, I think you will have to have a proper poverty alleviation strategy. The government has none. We have not seen attempts. If you go to Plastic City over the river, you'll get sick. Parts of Angai Avenue. And we are not seeing a government that has developed a poverty alleviation strategy. And in their housing approach, they are engaging and looking to solve the problems of the people who are in abject poverty. Housing seems to be, I mean, look how quick they give out all the lands along the Heroes Highway. It's beautiful infrastructure while people fighting over lands. You can see every day a new big structure. This government is seeking to enrich its people at the expense of others. And as they do that, they are not addressing the critical issue of poverty. We have seen many countries in this world with oil wealth and poverty. Only recently I've been looking at Nigeria, where developers are saying, look, we can't do low-cost housing because we got to end up putting the infrastructure and then people can't afford to pay. Now, it's a stark reality here. People cannot afford to pay because on the one hand, you're not doing significant increases in wages and salaries, and you are not improving the social sector. Then you are pushing people further in poverty. And I believe the government needs to, like Sherrod say, adopt from our manifesto the rent to own and to build houses with the sole aim of ensuring people who are in poverty can obtain a house and begin the process of coming out of poverty.
Are there any other questions?
Yes. Another question that I would like to ask at this time has to do with the various road constructions. Now, I think it was Mr. Andrews who spoke about roads being constructed around East Demerara. Sir, there is a trend, and I don't know if you can verify this. The road expansion program along the railway embankment appears to be selective. In some communities, there is a definite widening. And in other communities, there is no widening. You appear to have a bottleneck. The same thing is happening on the quarantine. And if I may be blunt, it would seem that this is the pattern where the road is widened in Black communities where you take the land, but in communities occupied by people of other ethnic group, you don't disturb them. Have you noticed that, and have people been making representation to you about that?
Well, Adam, listen. This government, it is not unfair for people citizens to have this kind of opinion with regards to the government's approach to construction. This government has always been uneven-handed with regards to different communities. If you look at South Ruimveldt, it took almost 4 years for the completion of Aubrey Road. How many other 4-lane highways have been built in 2 years, a year and a half, 3 years? that were not located in areas that support the APNU. And that alone speaks for itself. But the bigger thing to me, Adam, with regards to construction in Guyana is basically the way how the government manages these projects. So even if it is a case where, lands were not available in certain communities, but they were available in some, the question is the government continues basically to approach construction in a way that does not give any sort of care for people. And so it leaves citizens to come to any conclusion, because if it affects me, I have to come to a conclusion that it must be that you are against me, or you're against people who look like me, or you're against communities that I exist that don't traditionally support you as against the ones who support you, because these issues do not happen in those communities.
Let me add, Adam. I raised while I was opposition leader and actually provided evidence that they were coming up the road. And when they meet Plaisance, they widen. And you could go and see it now. It's manifest. And the businesses there were affected. So got to pull in, etc. Now got to spend money to go up, etc. And then as they pass Plaisance going, they disturb no one. And so this is something we would have documented and put in the public domain. And if the government doesn't want to admit bias, let me give you another example. They moved the vendors in, I don't remember if it's Luziknan or Monrepo, where they put up that big structure. In Luziknan, which is their support base. They get the tarmac and they put a big open market. When they meet Plaisance, they widen the tarmac, but left it just like that. Like if you're saying, oh, you want to do business, they must punish. And then they're annoyed when you raise it with them, but it is true. I was glad that the people of Pigeon Island got what they got. But you regularize Pigeon Island, which is your stronghold, and you refuse to do the same for other areas that would have got the same problems. And these are issues we have raised consistently as opposition, and we will continue to raise them because there is clearly bias in what is happening.
If I may, on the issue of what was said about the East Coast Railway embankment, it has been a complaint that has been coming frequently. And in fact, this week, we made some visit to check the works. And we can provide pictures of that as well, where one of the leaders expressing the examples of Plaisance. When you pass Plaisance, immediately after you enter the Better Hope, Vizeless area, you literally see the road strength, as Adam is alluding to. And also with that happening, there is the case where the road has been left in a deplorable state for almost a year or more than a year, because it appears that they're not sure how to proceed, because when you line up, when you go to the other areas and you can't line up well because you want to not displace what you consider your people. So now you're left in a bind. Well, how do we do it? And that's why the roads are left like that for a very, very long time. So in that case, when you pass Vizeless area and you get to about Felicity, you will see on one side there's a nice smooth part done on your right hand going all the way to Success. And then there is a breakage and the road is terrible again. Then you have another piece, you get to LBI, and that's all you're seeing on the railway embankment, because they are embedded in making everything political and not really looking to real development of all of the people. I believe that is why we're seeing the issues, even in infrastructure and in every sector they handle, because they're unable to look at situations in a manner that is there for development of all of the people. And we have that happening, and the evidence is clear on that East Coast Railway Embankment project, it is absolutely, absolutely clear.
And Adam, at the risk of laboring on this point, just for example's sake, and just to shore up our position, that this is more sometimes about politics than it is about people. Let us look at the rehabilitation of markets. We talk about Lusignan, we talk about Lusignan, we talk about Monrepo, there is Perica, the market of Perica, but the government wait almost 5 years after, at a time where they're about to call local government election, to decide that there's going to be a big poppy show in East Ruimveldt. And they go to East Ruimveldt to promise the people of East Ruimveldt that they will renovate that market. That market has been sitting there in a deplorable state for many, many years under the PPP government, and no attempt has been made to assist the city council to renovate that market. But every time there's an election coming up, these projects languish. They start and they languish under the PPP government for years until an election cycle approaches and they attempt to either complete it, or in some instances, they attempt to say, okay, we are going to start it. So as a promise that those persons who would not have traditionally supported them would believe the hype and would believe them and probably give them support with the hope that they would get this kind of relief. And I think that this is sinister. I think it is wicked governance, and it is not governance for all people. And as my comrade said, it is governance for some people. And that is the reality across most ministries and across the implementation of most projects. There is a political slant to get votes when it comes to the non-traditional PPP support base.
And Adam, we can look at many more cases. Ejil must be the dumbest public works minister ever. You are talking, the government is talking about the Linden to Mobura Letem road. Now you're doing that road as a double lane, which to me makes no sense, because if you're talking about significant trade and bringing containers, etc., that will be a disaster. Yeah. You then come to the Soesdijk Linden Highway, where you continue to do a double lane. Again, I've said they should have put a new double lane, use that, and then repair the present Soesdijk Linden Highway so it becomes a 4-lane road. Now, when you coming down all the way with this 2-lane, you can butt up with wherever they continue the Heroes Highway to carry it as 4-lane. In fact, right now I see part leading to the bridge. It's like it can be a 6-lane. I don't know what the common sense behind it. It looks very asinine to me. But how do you explain coming along the East Bank with a double lane, and then when you meet the Soesdijk Linden Highway, you are going to go back to a single lane, a double lane, sorry, rather than the 4-lane. Now, it makes absolutely no sense. I wish to point out that we did say to them, and I said this publicly, we should have done the Soesdijk to Mahaika Road as a 4-lane with cutoffs to come back to the East Coast, and they would not have had some of the problems they have on the East Coast at present. But because of how you structure your discrimination, even infrastructure has become part of the discriminatory politics. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality.
I see the hand of Antonio there. Please proceed with your question.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Norton and Mr. Andrews, I take note of the references towards the subpar works that is currently going on in the country. Mr. Saiku, to start with, I am aware that you're a resident of the site of South Ruimveldt. Are you satisfied as a regular road user? Are you satisfied with the completion of the Aubrey road which of course I know and I've been covering extensively, has been in development for so many years and has now been completed. And Mr. Norton, as a resident of Pleasant, are you satisfied with the current development works? Because many persons complained, as Ms. Haynes referenced, about the dust pollution and the slackfulness of these works.
Thank you, Antonio. I'm definitely not satisfied. Let me give you an example. The road, after much missed deadlines for opening, eventually it was opened. And this is a real example. My daughter decided to go south, to go east along Aubrey Barker Road and encountered a puncture. Brand new road, puncture, because there was an area that was not 100% complete. A young man came to help her and encountered a puncture. That is the kind of unfinished work, that is the kind of shabby work that we present to the people. I am definitely not satisfied with Aubrey Barker. As a lot of folks, a lot of persons in this country are not satisfied with road works that have been done in their communities. We talk about dust pollution. Residents do not only experience dust pollution during construction, but even after roads are open, they endure dust pollution because there is no policy that guides the transportation of construction materials. So you have trucks that are driving on the road, they come over speed hump and sand comes out of that truck. It is left on the roadways. You go to Aubrey Barker on both sides of the 4-lane of Aubrey Barker, there's an accumulation of sand. And before you know it, when the wind comes, there's dust. So we've been affected for years with regards to dust pollution during construction, and we're still being affected with it as a result of dust accumulating on the road. So definitely we're not satisfied, but the government has got as we said, the ministry needs to shore up its monitoring, needs to shore up its project implementation, because you cannot say to me that with regards to construction, during construction, with regards to dust pollution, we have contractors wetting the road, that there's dust suppression chemicals that can last as long as 1 week. An application, there's a local company in Guyana that produces dust suppression chemical that can last 1 week. How come the government has never explored this to include it in the contract? Because at the end of the day, in my opinion, we just wake up every morning, decide what project we're going to do, award it to somebody that we probably know under suspicious circumstances, and we give little care or concern for the people who it's affecting.
You know, I'd say a few things here. Guyana suddenly got a roundabout syndrome. When Robeson Ben was Minister of Works, he sought to make the first roundabout by that seawall area. The PPP failed. Whether they like Patterson or not, he came and he put a proper roundabout there. Ever since then, the PPP got a roundabout syndrome, which also results in a lot of stupidity. They place a roundabout at Ogle. Now, this roundabout has 2 lanes. So what in essence happened, the outside lane where they should have had a 3rd one so people could keep moving, they cannot keep moving because the 2 come in, occupied, and you get a long backup of traffic, sometimes way up to UG. What it says is that they didn't have the space for a roundabout. They didn't create it, but they put a roundabout. That must be stupidity. That's the only thing I can see. Similarly, Linden. You're going to Linden now, they put a roundabout. Which direction the traffic coming from? One from this side, one going the other way. There was no need for a roundabout there, but the friends and family can make money. And so a lot of the infrastructure is not structured to solve the problems they should solve. They are structured to put resources in the hands of the PPP, family, friends, and favorites. You're talking about subpar work. they need to tell us what is the warranty on the Suze like Linden Highway. Because when you're going up, you see the scraping off the top, not doing a proper foundation, and then they put the bitumen over it. When there were problems with the foundation, you don't have to be an engineer to know that they're doing nonsense. As it relates to whether I'm satisfied in about Plaisance, the answer is no. I don't understand the logic or the common sense. When you leave Ogle, they're doing that piece of road, and they dug up most of it. So there's a little strip high up above that vehicles have got to run. Of course, if you're driving a 4x4, you could go on the flat and you're gone. But the person with the average car has to stay up there, because even to go down and try to go up, people are puncturing, the bottom is grazing. So I cannot be satisfied with what they're doing in Plaisance. And I am interested to see when they come to the market, if they're breaking down the market in Plaisance, because the road, in the part, the market is in the part of the road. So I'm interested, I make my comments on that after they would have completed it. So it's a lot of nonsense and wastage of resources of the people of Guyana. I mean, every time I drive and I see them putting these two outside lanes on the Heroes Highway, and then it is only going to the bridge, because after that they don't give out the lands and it can't go anywhere. So obviously it's not intended to make a 6-lane highway. And then let's look at the stupidity. If you had argued when you bulldozed the people in Mocha, that you wanted it for expansion because you're going to need to move from a 4th or 6th lane, that would have been understandable. Yeah. But it isn't now, because in the same part, they have given out the lands, and unless they can come now and break down their monsters they put in there and compensate the people, and I don't rule that out, they can very well see it as a means of making money down the line. We get it now. We know the Suze like Linden Highway. There is a law that says how many feet away you should be. And you see they're giving people land right next to the road. So when you turn in to Linden, you're seeing works going on. They're no longer leaving that space. So even if they want to build a 4-lane highway, when they meet Amelia's ward, they will have to compensate the people that they put there, because they haven't given it to Lindeners. They're giving it to people outside of Linden. And then when the time compensate, then they will compensate them. But it's an issue that will have to be taken on, because the law said before what distance you must be away. Why are you allowing people to build close to the highway? There are virtually no protocols. Let me give you another one. The Suze like Linden Highway from Yarracabra to the junction will always be filled with overburden. When the rain falls, be guaranteed you got to wash your vehicle, because they have no protocols whatsoever to deal with bringing out to the overburden. And the people they give these lands damage the shoulder of the highway to go in. So it is part of the lawless culture that has been cultivated under the PPP.
Mr. Saiku, if I can just if I can seek a request from you kindly for reporting purposes, because I recently visited Aubrey Barker Road, and 2 persons would have related that they're satisfied with the works. But for reporting purposes, can you provide some photos of the issues so that I can able to possibly do it as a follow-up story, please, if you have the time.
Definitely.
Because I believe that when we're making references to these things, we will have to have evidence so that we can do a juxtaposition.
Well, I did give you one that is live with regards and real, up close and personal with regards to my daughter encountering.
No, I am not.
So I'll definitely
take photos.
Yes, Anthony.
Take photos, please.
You'll have those.
Thank you very much, sir.
And I think we got to be careful when people say they're satisfied. A lot of people see a road and they say they're satisfied. Now, as a journalist, I believe you should engage proper engineers who know about road construction and get a professional view. Because it is one thing to say, when people drive on the highway, they might say, oh, it's good, I like it. But 2 years from now, people said they liked Heroes Highway when it opened. Every day they're fixing. It's damaged all day. So we have to be careful and draw a distinction between asking people who are laymen and women and asking, when I speak on the road, I will engage engineers, architects, etc., both at home and in the United States. I have some of them who went to school with me, and I will get a professional account on what is happening. And if you just ask citizens like that, the likely answer is we're satisfied because what you had before is worse. Yeah. But it doesn't go to the root of the problem. Like the Suzuki Linden Highway, yes, it looks good at the top. But if you speak with engineers, they will tell you what they're doing there isn't going to last because the foundation that was undulated, you just grade off the top. And I was to check in the contract to see if part of the contract was that they had to lay a new foundation or it just speaks to taking off the top and relaying it.
A quick question, sir, before we shut off. I noticed that you have issued a sort of a legal threat to Ms. Odessa Primus. I saw some comments saying you only asked for 500,000. The demand is irrelevant. But what has been her response, sir, to your demand that she take down some posts and compensate you?
Well, as I understand it, and my lawyer is here, that is a normal procedure. They send out that letter. But I know in terms of the legal documents I would have signed, she's been sued for $10 million. That's the first thing I want to say. And I want to say this about the money. I believe I'll win the case and the money will go to charity. I am not inclined to take money that I'm not so sure come from the legal processes in Guyana. And so I will be inclined to let that go to charity and people in need. Now, the next point I want to state is this. I was not lured into politics by money. I came into politics as a young man with a commitment to serve Guyana. And so money was never a priority in my life. And by that I mean accumulating wealth and going on. You need money to live. But I want to say this. It's not a priority in my life. But if you decide you will damage my character by accusing me of taking money from the PPP and Barajak deal, it's a different ballgame. I spent my political life campaigning on my integrity, which I could say is still intact. No politician, no businessman can truthfully say they bribed me in any fashion. Even in my days in the public service, I have avoided getting involved in anything. I like to speak frankly and openly. And when you do that, you can't get skeletons in your closet. And so, for me, it is an attempt and an attack on my integrity. And I wouldn't allow it. Because I have campaigned on my integrity, I live my life in a particular way. And so, having made the statement, and this is a trend of some people of Odessa's ilk, having slander, libel you, they then go on like if they're the victim. She's not victim here. You're trying to mobilize sympathy. That seems to be the approach. I become the victim and I mobilize sympathy. The lawsuit will go ahead. Because the victim here is me, who she falsely contended received money, and I'm in Barajak payroll. Absolute garbage. I know the PPP. If the PPP had anything on me, that I put it out long. So I believe that she's out of place. And then I saw some of her supporters resorting to blackness. Why is he doing this to a black woman? May I make this point? When she said what she said about me, I was black. I didn't become black last week. And so, don't play the black race card with me. I believe people who violate the law must face the consequences. And I will ensure that that will happen. And then, some of them ask, but why I didn't sue Vanessa? Vanessa was a member of the People's National Congress Reform. When the issue occurred, I think a lot of people didn't believe it. That's a different issue. But the point is, she was a member of the People's National Congress Reform. The elders in the party asked me to settle it inside the party, and I did that. And I think I had the right to do that. With Odessa, it's a totally different ballgame. When you say something like that and you're from another political party, you're seeking to score political points and influence people out there. I won't comment on Norman Brown. I just think he lives in a fool's paradise, has an overestimation of his influence. I know he has none in the party, and is the kind of idiocy you should ignore, or else you will just be caught up in nonsense. But I want to say this. When you come out of a lawless culture, or you join a lawless culture, you will believe that you could go ahead, slander, libel people, and get away with it. It wouldn't happen with me. You notice I never commented on like how people comment on how you look and that. I don't get in that. I deal with the issue. How you look, everybody will see. They will determine. But for me, once you challenge my integrity, especially in finances, I will take you to court. If you believe what you said is true, come in the court and support your arguments. That's all I would say. For me, these people who call themselves influencers must not be allowed to spread misinformation, false information, and be allowed to go scot-free. Some of them overseas, you're going to left them because it might cost you too much. But once they're in this jurisdiction and they're in politics, that is one of the significant difference. You in politics in an opposition political party and trying to discredit me. And as a consequence, the PNC and APNU, I will deal with you and deal with you condignly.
Any further questions?
The press conference ain't going too long. I was interested in the situation in the schools as a former teacher. And what's going on now couldn't happen back, let's say, 10 years ago. What has happened to the school inspectorate system? What sort of monitoring is being done to ensure that schools stick to a certain form or norm? And what is the quality of the teachers entering the classrooms today?
Okay, let's start with the quality of the minister. If you do not show the intellectual capacity to analyze the issues surrounding education and be able to formulate policies, develop programs, and implement them, you're going to be in deep trouble. Every time I see the present minister in the parliament, I am so concerned that our children will always be in trouble. You get no, when last has an education policy paper been tabled in the parliament?
Yeah.
I don't think one was ever done under the PPP. So they haven't developed the policy framework to deal with the problems in the school. And I remember President Irfan Ali saying to a journalist that they ain't got a plan, they just make it up as they go along. You can't do that in education. Education, you have a number of critical issues to deal with. One, the quality of our teachers. Their approach to teacher education is reducing the quality of teachers we produce, and it is ensuring that the teachers can't perform in the way they should perform. The first problem. Secondly, corporal punishment has been removed from the school system. And I'm not a supporter of corporal punishment. I didn't beat my children, and I don't believe in it. But I'll say this. If you remove corporal punishment, you need to have clear mechanisms for social control. And they would have removed corporal punishment, but they have put no mechanisms in place for social control. We teach teachers to teach, not to deal with social problems. And there is need for reform in the teacher training program to do at least one thing. Give them some social work, psychology skills because of the problems. But that apart, the school system needs a structured approach to ensuring that there are social workers, psychologists in the school system to deal with the problems in the school. A lot of children live in broken homes with problems, going to school. And so sometimes for them, school can become a playground because life at home is misery. And so if we're dealing with the school system, we also have to deal with parenting, educating young single mothers, etc., on how to parent in this era. I mean, if you got money and you're upper class and your children going to the highfalutin schools, you're in a different category. But we're talking here about poor people children. Adam, the point I am making is unless there's a comprehensive approach that deals with it at the community level, at the level of the child, at the level of the school, at the level of the class, at the level of the ministry, then we are in deep trouble. Because we're not only talking about declining grades, we are talking about social problems. I was in Sophia at a car wash talking with some young men. And you take them back. Men talking, but none of them look over 25, but when they're being in jail. I mean, something is wrong with our society when so many young people are going to prison. And then, while the government is claiming it's allocate money for the rehabilitation of the system, as Sherrod pointed out in a press statement, they are putting the money in infrastructure rather than providing the toolkits, etc., for the rehabilitation of the young people. So this government is contributing to the economic problems by not paying people an adequate wage and salary, and they are contributing to the social problems by the things they are allowing to happen in the society. And lawlessness will always breed more lawlessness.
Any other question?
There is one other issue I want to comment on. And in the future, we'll do a proper statement on it. I noticed the talk about building an oil refinery. I'm not saying no to an oil refinery. What I'm saying is that the government needs to end this knee-jerk approach to governance. Yes, there's a war going on, Iran, Israel, and the United States. Yes, the price is going up. But is the solution a refinery? How do you arrive at that? Did you have a study done? Have you looked at the pros and cons of it? Do you have an energy policy which says oil is a finite product and therefore it will come to an end, and that we are developing the best mix of solar, wind, hydro, etc.? We see Trinidad got a refinery, and we know they're now looking for things to refine. Sometimes it might be better to collaborate with them. And if you're claiming it's a security problem, you need to show us where the security vulnerabilities are, and then we work out the problems that we have. But just to, in a knee-jerk reaction, say, we'll build a refinery, investors are interested, without a thorough analysis. And if I am wrong, there is a thorough analysis, please send us the document, please lay it in the parliament so we can study it and arrive at a conclusion.
Another issue that was dealt with in this press conference that I really want us to comment on, and probably MP Duncan can also join in on this, is the street vending issue. It must be noted that the government issued a circular to the vendors, and it did not state that they would not be able to occupy Sherry Street between a certain time, and that vending would be allowed from 6 in the afternoon to 6 basically a.m. But there is no indication in that announcement if there would be a grace period for these vendors, for them to adjust. There are vendors who have fixed structures there. There are some who have mobile structures, the vans and stuff like that. Those persons can move. But what about those who have some fixed structures that basically they cannot just pick it up and move in a week time? What about their investment? So there's no guidance as to a grace period. There's no guidance at all with regards to that. And it comes back to the inhumane manner in which we try to implement some solutions to existing issues. And that is a perfect example. So the government does not plan. Good policy dictates that you plan first. And if the government is aware that street vending exists in this country, but there's no policy to tackle street vending, to manage it properly, to make it as a part of our economic mix in terms of our urban plans. And so you find this ad hoc approach with the leader alluded to with regards to other project implementation. It's the same thing that's happening to street vending. We're not considering the fact that persons who could not find employment in the formal system have resorted to street vending. And now they've built their lives for years on street vending, sending their children to school. And we're about to disrupt them without first consulting them, without first giving them an alternative, without first telling them that, listen, the plan includes some level of support for you to transition. How many street vendors do we have on Cherry Street? How many are they? No consultation was done. How many are they? What is it that they're vending? Do we know that if we're going to relocate them to some place that we've already planned about, we know who to relocate? Because if we're going to put a vendor, we cannot put a vendor that's selling food in an area that is selling clothes. So these things have to be planned out. And I think the populace and those young entrepreneurs, those mothers and fathers who have been relying on this practice to eke out a living, they're now at a disadvantage. And I think that it is something that we need to carry, because this affects people, and it undermines and it basically speaks to the government's approach, again, this inhumane kind of approach.
I want to make one point here and identify it for you to look at it. All the time the Spanish were vending on Sheriff Street. Ask yourself why suddenly people have got to move. Go and look at it now. That's all I would say.
I just want to make the point. The Sheriff Street issue, when it was issued, it was just about maybe a couple of days. And on the ministry's page, if you check it now, they immediately went to enforcement, because they posted on their page the removal of not structures that are permanent, but an actual truck with wheels on it. The ministry would have removed it. Now, one day after that, this was Wednesday, they issued a letter to, and warning, I should say, to the persons vending from Better Hope to Vicelus, saying that they have 14 days to remove their structures. And what I will say, because I am a counselor on that NDC, from time immemorial that the vending would have started there, that NDC, we would have written the ministry indicating that there is an issue arising here. Of course, as the NDC, because it's a public road, we did not have the authority to instruct them to move or anything like that. But what we did as a council was ensure that the health and safety aspect was carried out. So we made regular checks, we provided certificates once persons went through the process, etc. And while we continue to engage the ministry, stating, we started out with a list, I believe, of 15 stalls. And to date, we now have a list of almost 40 stalls at that end. And it is at this time they're now coming to just rush the process. What we believe needs to happen, because these are people who are looking for daily bread for their family. And you cannot just jump up after being warned before it made it to this stage and just decide that you will dash people out. You need to find solutions. And this is what we're emphasizing, that you need to find solutions for those families to ensure that they can continue to feed their family, and then set up. In other Caribbean countries, we see boardwalks being done nicely and, to accommodate the livelihood of persons. And this government needs to stop being heavy-handed in their operation and the way they're dealing with the citizens of the country. And we are calling on them, especially in the instances of Sheriff Street and the Better Hope to Vicelus, that you need to put the lives of persons into consideration and look for alternatives and ensure that people can live in this the fastest growing economy in the world, Guyana, that people can live and they don't have to be then forced into doing things that they should not do to have a livelihood for their families.
One of the things I also want to address quickly when I was addressing the Odessa Primus issue was this talk that while I was opposition leader, we didn't take the government to court. When I checked, we took them at least 10 times. That's all I'd say. Yeah.
Any other questions?
No.
With there being no other questions.
If I may, just one question directed to Mr. Todd. Mr. Todd, if these vendors, given that most of them are single mothers, is it possible that you would take it upon yourself to represent them legally? For those persons who cannot afford legal representation, given these circumstances, if they're going to be removed?
I think sometimes we have to be careful. I don't think it's a outrightly a legal matter, because sometimes, you see, in law is very wide, and sometimes as lawyers, It doesn't necessarily have to be litigation, but sometimes your intervention is to give leadership and to be able to negotiate some form of resolution to the problem. Either you're going to seek more time, you're going to have some form of better arrangement to be put in place. So sometimes it's not correct to just outrightly look at it, because if you're going to analyze it, you have to go back down to the line of who put them there. Did they have authority? Who you know, all of this you'll have to assess. So I wouldn't say legal action outright, because the facts in relation to their removal and how they got there is not clear, very clear to me. But I know for a fact this is happening all over the country. All right. And so I will support what my colleagues are saying in relation to the humane approach and in a more organized way. I think this is what we are really saying. It has to be done in a more organized way, and there must be alternatives which are appropriate to the vendors. And then you give them a transition time, adequate time to transition, to move, to relocate. All right. And so I believe that is what we're going to be doing, more than just labeling it a legal issue. We are going to be giving that type of support structure to be able to have that done in a more organized way.
And like we said in the press statement, it must be fair and professional.
Yeah. Yes.
At this time, I want to thank you for joining today's press conference, and I want to thank the members of the media for your respectful participation. Do have a great weekend.
Recording stopped.